So we are 5 minutes over time, so we're going to start this session. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our Master in Design for Distributed Innovation webinar session. My name is Josefina Nano, and I'm the coordinator of this master's program. So I'm going to start sharing my screen. Let me know if you can see it. Can you all see my screen? Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. So today for this webinar, alongside our esteemed panel of experts, we are really excited to provide you with some insight into our program. And joining us today, we have Tomás Vivanco, architect and MDDI co-director. We have Giovanna Daniez Turano, professor at Universidad de los Andes and MDDI faculty. We also have Liting Liao, hybrid educator and MDDI alumni. And we have Sat Chinoy, lead at Sputnik Lab and MDDI student. So to kick things off, let me provide you with a brief overview of today's agenda. I'll start with the webinar's overview. As mentioned previously, we have 4 keynote speakers who will walk us through different aspects of MDDI. Firstly, Tomás Vivanco will dive deep into the program itself. He will mention what is the FabCity network, what it provides, the methodology behind this program, why is it a pressing matter to be part of this kind of programs and movement, amongst other important aspects as well. Then over to faculty Giovanna Daniez. She will shed light on one of the many courses this program has, which is biotechnologies, and what topics can you expect from this course? And she will also provide some real-life projects that reflect these topics. Then both Liting and Sad will share their first-hand experience as MDDI alumni and current student. And finally, we will go over some general information about the program, the fees, the requirements, how can you apply. And in that same slot, we will space some time to have a Q&A so that you can clear out any doubts or inquiries you might have. Nevertheless, throughout the whole session, I encourage you to actively engage with us, ask questions, and explore how this program can help you realize your aspirations in the fields of design and innovation. So over to you, Tom. I will let you share your screen.
Great. Thank you very much, Jose. Thank you all for connecting to this session, to this webinar. As Jose was mentioning, I will explain somehow what is behind MDDI and how our methodology aims to address the actual and future challenge that we are confronting through design. So to start, I think that it's extremely important to understand what is somehow design, what are the impacts of what we design. And everything that we design is called novel entities. Novel entities or new entities are those artificial things that we have designed. Probably all the things that are surrounding you that have been created by humans, and we have introduced them into the planetary system. Just to put a simple example, the pencil that I have in my hand, the pen that I have in my hand, didn't exist in nature, but we created as humans, right? So novel entity, we can understand that a pen, for example, it is a novel entity. So why this is relevant? Why is it relevant to understand this concept of novel entities, or let's say the results of a typical design process? It's because when we measure the planetary boundaries led by the team of Kate Radoff in England, we can see that the main, let's say, challenges that we are confronting, that we are confronting in order to keep operating, in order that we can keep operating inside our ecological floor and environmental ceiling, we need to start gathering certain data. As you can see in this graph, the novel entities was never quantified before. The impact of the novel entities were never quantified before. But at the beginning of 2020, 22nd or 21st, a study appeared and they measured the impact of all the things that we have designed, of these artificial things that we have designed, or the novel, or understood as novel entities, in their ecological ceiling and or social floor. Impact of this data is catastrophic. Novel entities, or the things that we design, have the major impact in both ceiling, in the environmental ceiling and the social foundations of our society. So the question that we need to understand is, do we need to design more? Do we need more design? Or are we going to keep the way how we design things, right? And this is totally associated with the overshot day, right? As you probably know, our planet, we operate year by year in a kind of credit, or let's say check account or credit account of the capacity of our planet for regenerating the natural resources that we consume year by year is being increasing every day, every year. In the last 10 years, we have like an important stop, and that's because of the pandemic. And then after the pandemic, we have like a kind of, we manage how to keep things sustainable. Somehow, this is a condition that is going to increase as the graph that we can see here. So the typical design practice have teach us or learn us, or introduce us to design things in our studios, isolated from our environment, that isolated from our communities, isolated from the production processes. So somehow we have over-designed all the things that are surrounding us, but we have not designed our environment. We have not designed things articulated, that we have not designed things in a systemic approach. And what we propose on Fab City Foundation is to change the productive model. Typically, nowadays, our productive models is sustained in a linear process that we call it PITO, products in, trash out. That means that there are certain regions or certain countries in which we extract raw materials. Those raw materials are transported via ship mainly to some countries that they are commonly known to produce almost, all the goods and the objects of the planet. Then they transport it to to other countries or regions that they are consumed, and then at the end they are wasted in huge electronic or physical landfills, mainly in second or third countries. So we propose to change this PITO model into a DDoM model that is called data in, data out, in which if we use data, if we use the capacity for sharing all the, let's say, the digital information, all the bits of objects, we can share, let's say, in a planetary or in a global sharing platform, all the knowledge and all the capacity for fabricating almost anything. And then we can locally fabricate and manufacture things with local natural resources and local infrastructure for producing almost anything. For example, Fab Labs. In the linear way, typically, when we extract the raw materials, we transport, we try to we convert those raw materials into a mass manufacturing. Designer, as you can see here in the graph, is an outsider. It only appears or only intervenes in only the fabrication process, right? Somehow, design is a rigid development. So we propose a change. We propose a change in which design starts from a local scale, considering the needs of the local neighborhoods, of the local citizens, and then using the local materials, we can recirculate them locally. But also, we can produce our own biomaterials. Then we propose a local production based on demand, connected with Industry 4.0, for example. And then we propose the sharing and the construction of new supply chains via global platforms of data. So MDDI is the Master in Design for Distributed Innovation. It's a hybrid master program. That means that you will have online classes, but at the same time, you will be required to prototype in your local context. You will be required to work with your local community. And to do that, we focus on the intersection of design, technologies, ecosystems, and communities in order to improve the planetary well-being. Our goal is to connect global change makers with local innovators, offering these kind of in-person learning experiences, but also in-person learning experience by applying all the global knowledge that you will receive from faculty that are located all around the world. The Global Fab City Network is a network that then stands over the Fab Lab Global Network. Nowadays, the Fab Lab network is composed by more than 5,000 Fab Labs spread all around the world. And then the Fab City network is the connection in between those Fab Labs and their cities and their bioregions. The aim is to produce locally all the needs that is all the goods and products that the city needs. And that can become in the share of a pen, for example, but also in the shape of food, in the shape of new materials, in the shape of a new learning methodology, in the shape of a service. Nowadays, we have students that are located in different places in Montreal, in Lima, Sao Paulo, Pune, in India, in Bali. This is, I think, here we're missing our graduates that are located in Spain, in Germany, in the Netherlands, and in the US. And the methodology is based on what we call the Fab City Strata. The strata is a way, with an approach that we have that help us to identify global and complex problems and in order to isolate potential design opportunities. So we start from understanding this local infrastructure for developing products. Then the new ways of how we learn in our local context. We understand that someone that is in the US and someone that is in China or someone that is in Lima, Peru, they have different, as there are different cultures, they have different approaches of how they learn to develop their proper skills. Then at third, we scale to incubate projects in a very local scale, that means in the scale of neighborhoods. Then we scale up in the scale of a district, then we can move to the scale of the cities, then into the bioregions, and then into a global scale. So we base our methodology in three main questions: how we design, in which we give students some techniques for making things. Then in why we design are the methodologies to make innovations. And then a third is where we design, and then we give different strategies and ways of how they can implement their projects in both local and global scales. So our academic structure is divided in three main terms and plus a final project. So during the first term that starts in October and ends up and finishes at the end of December, we use the strata as an analytical tool, right? And we focus in trying to answer the question, why we design. So during this term, students will learn how to make some analysis of materials, analysis of their local ecosystem, analysis of their local potential opportunities that they might have. Two, we use the strata as an experimental tool. So we focus on the tools for making impact. That means we try to answer the question in how we design. So here, during this term, is the much more explorative and open term in which you will test different kind of digital and biotechnologies. And Giovanna probably will introduce some of them. And then in the third term, that they start in April and then that's in June, in July, in June, we focus on we use the strata as a tool for implementing your projects. You will work in three main implementations, and we will focus on in where we design. Implementation number one, we will focus on the technical aspects of your project. Number two, on the local and regional scale of your project. And then the third is the global implementation of your project, and we will help you to design those those implementations, and also to measure the impact, to generate metrics, and to create business models for those for your projects. And then at the end, during July, you will wrap up during the last month all your project, and we will help you to communicate and to, let's say, publish your project to become a real thing for you to become the leaders of your personal projects. During these 3 terms, all the classes are structured in the three main, let's say, variables, or the 3 main topics that we are addressing that I mentioned before: technologies, communities, and ecosystem, plus a studio class. So in technology, that track is mainly led by the FabLab Barcelona team with Tech Tools 1, Tech Tools 2, then the propagating collaboration led by Beno Juarez from Lima, Police Technologies led by Guillem Camprodon, the director of FabLab Barcelona. And then we have a value opportunities that is led by Sion team, mainly focused on how blockchain technologies can help you to create new value opportunities. Then in the communities track, we have the distributed leadership led by Ronald Sistek, activating communities led by the Fab City team. And then we have a social, economical, environmental impact and evaluation class led by Reflow and consultancy office from Brazil. Then in the ecosystem track, we have a class led by, it's called a Human Plus Path, the bio interaction, led by Elizabeth Jenner. Then the More Than Human workshop, led by Thomas Dugan. Biotechnologies, led by Joanna Daniels, she's here. Then bio-based economy, led by the Materium team. The Materium is the biggest biomaterial platform in the world. They will be teaching you. And then we have a workshop led by Thomas Diez, the co-director of the program, in which he integrates a different specialists. One of those specialists are the Donut of Economy group from the Leeds University, led by Ket Radov. And then the studio class is led by Josefina Nano, Thomas Diez, and myself, in which we're going to focus during the first term on system design, on systems, then in the second of developing technologies, and then third, the full stack design studio. Then to close the final project development, during the final project development, you will have certain tutors that will guide you to wrap up your project. Those tutors, for example, this year are Kate Armstrong, the Executive Director of Fab City Foundation, Guillem Caprodon from FabLab Barcelona team members, and so on. Sorry. So why we believe it's important for you to be part of this network? First, we are building a community. So by joining Fab City Network, you will connect with Fab Labs around the world. You will collaborate with alumni from AYAC, alumni from Barcelona. You will have the chance to participate in the Fab City Summits, in the also in the Fab Lab global conferences. Also, what we believe that is extremely crucial is that you will put the global knowledge that you will acquire into practice directly, right, locally. You will not have to travel, let's say, to other country, let's say Europe in this case, and then try to learn new things, and then try to adopt when you come back home. Then you will pass, like to say, a hard time trying to apply the knowledge that you learn in another context into your local practice. So we believe that in order to build sustainable solutions, we need to start applying immediately what you have been learning in your local context. Also, you have the chance to balance your life. That means that the flexibility that we have designed during the curriculum and the weekly working load is very somehow efficient. So if you have other activities, for example, you have work, or you have other personal things to do, you can balance on MDDI. You will also, in the comfort zone of your houses, of your local places, you will acquire some cutting edge skills with cutting edge faculty that are located everywhere. Many of the faculties are doctors. Many of the faculty are, also all the faculties are continuously publishing, learning, and developing new teaching methodologies that will improve that improve their learning experience. And then at the end, MDDI is an international European accreditation, fully accredited master program. That means that you will receive some credits in your house, in your local country. Those European credits might be help you, for example, in the future, if you want to pursue a PhD. So there are some important professional opportunities. We have students that work, for example, in the public ministers, in governments, in city councils. All of them works as consultants. Many of our students also, they run their own startups. They have started their own companies with MDDI projects. And of course, many of them also are social innovators and entrepreneurs. So yeah, Jose, I think that's all.
Yes, great. Thank you, Tom. So over to you, Joe. Joe, if you want to share your screen, let me know if you're able to do it. So for the ones that just
So I'm no
open
longer, I don't see the share screen.
option.
It was available.
Let me check.
Okay, now I see it now.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Great. And in the meantime, for the ones that just connected, Giovanna Daniels is faculty at MDDI. She's professor at Universidad de los Andes, and she's going to talk specifically about the course she gives in MDDI. So over to you.
I think I'm showing the wrong slide, right? The one that you don't see it complete.
No, it was kind of like in between. Like
okay, see. So let me share the other screen.
Yes.
Now you see it
perfectly.
Perfect. Okay, so thank you everyone for joining us today. I'm going to talk a little bit about the workshop I give at the MDDI master's degree, which I have named Design and Biotechnology, a Necessary Bond. And I'm going to explain a little bit why and how the course has been changing throughout the years. So first of all, I'm a biologist and microbiologist. I have a PhD in plant pathology, and over, I guess, around 12 years, I have been studying a plant disease called late blight disease, which affects potatoes and tomatoes. But I'm currently a professor at Universidad de los Andes in the School of Architecture and Design. So you might be wondering, what is a scientist doing in design? And it's thanks to a challenge, the Biodesign Challenge. So I was invited to teach a course to prepare design students to compete at the Biodesign Challenge. And since then, I have been learning about design thinking strategies and working with communities, which has changed my perspective as a scientist. And what used to be plant diseases, as is this corn smut, now I see them as opportunities, as is this huitlacoche. So this is something, these slides are actually slides I show in my class. And it's to show students that for what might be a problem for someone is an opportunity for others. So basically, the workshop does a quick, it's really quick because it's 1 week. So we go over different tools that you can find in design thinking to explore communities, to explore problems, define what it is exactly that we want to address, then ideate solutions, quickly think about prototypes. We don't get to do prototypes. Some students are already advanced in their ideas, so they have some things to show. And then we learn how to communicate our ideas. So before, I had a class that was prepared with biotechnologies that I taught students about, but then I have changed it a little bit because when students arrive to this workshop, they already have ideas of projects they want to address in their master's degree. So what I have done is, how can I help students fall in love with the problem they're addressing? Like, really understand, is this a problem? Who is affected by this problem? How does that people see the problem? And as Tomás was mentioning, it's all a system. So problems are not linear in the sense that I want to, for example, sometimes students come to the class and say, I want to create a helmet to protect people's head when they are going on the bikes. but that will only take you to create a helmet. But if instead we think about, we want to protect people's head while they are going on their bikes, maybe it will lead us to a helmet, but it might lead us to 1,000 other solutions. So basically in this workshop, we think about what is the problem we want to address, and we find in the community, we find in the literature, what is the best solution to address this problem based on what the information you have been gathering. So something I have noticed throughout the years is that there are kind of like 4 strategies where students begin working on this type of projects. So first, they might fall in love with a technology. And I show some of the technologies here that I'm seeing. Sad. I remember Sad was really passionate about microplastics and all the world of microplastics. But so students arrive to the class with certain passions or with certain interests or with certain communities that they feel really close to. And that is the best motor to really work on and solve something. So then other students might have a challenge that they were given. So for example, I work at a company, and by next year, we have to eliminate all single-use plastics. So I need a solution for that. That is the challenge the student was given. Others might be driven by a social problem. So I'm going to talk here, I'm going to give you an example. So for example, a lot of students like a lot or work a lot in the fashion industry. So they are aware that the fashion industry is one of the most contaminants in the world. So for example, can we find alternatives to dyes that do not affect water sources, biodiversity, and other and like that? And yet other students are not sure where they want to work, but they're in love with an ecosystem or with a plant or with an animal. And they say, I want to do something with this. And like that, we start building ideas, we start researching in the scientific literature, and we see like what has been done and what can be done so that your project is really innovative and unique. So I'm going to give you an example of each of these approaches. So this is an example of a group of students that saw a YouTube video where they saw that there were the scientists adding something into a flask with water that was under like 4 degrees Celsius or 2 degrees Celsius, and that water immediately froze. So I don't know why. Okay, now we can see. So they're adding something. Into the flask. This is water that is cool. It's at like 2 degrees Celsius, so and it freezes immediately. And they were like, what is happening there? So they started investigating what is that the scientists added into the water, and they found that it was a protein derived originally from a bacteria called Pseudomonas syringae. And this bacteria, it's volatile, so it's found in the air, and it's what causes the hail. And why does this bacteria produce it? It's because it freezes the liquid inside the plant tissue in order to break the tissue so that the bacteria can easily invade the plant. But today, this protein is synthesized in a lab. You no longer need the bacteria. You can synthesize it in a lab, and you can spray it in places where it's not, where in skiing resorts, where it's not cold enough to produce natural snow, you can produce artificial snow. So the students were like, this is amazing. This already exists, but in what other context can we apply this technology? And they found that in the refrigerating world, it could be used to design fridges to transport vaccine to rural areas in Colombia. So it would be, and they don't stay only with the technology, but they also explore how is that these people are transporting vaccines today to rural areas. And they saw that it was in these fridges that they held in like one shoulder. So they had like a back pain, and the vaccines would break because streets in the rural areas are not perfect. I mean, you have a lot of holes and a lot of like imperfectness. So they also designed a backpack so that people could transport these vaccines with their technology in a better way. And today, this is a startup. It's called NanoFreeze, and they work with brands such as Coca-Cola and like really large brands to have retain a cold chain that it's more energetically environmentally friendly, because you don't need to freeze in a freezer like at minus 20 degrees Celsius, but you can freeze at 2 or 4 degrees Celsius. Another example, now a little bit challenge driven. So I was telling you, for example, there are students that say in 1 year, I have to find a solution for the single-use plastic. So for example, here is a single-use plastic, the paper bubble wrap. So students had that challenge, and they learned about this bacterial cellulose that it's produced by a consortia of bacteria and yeast that are in the kombucha tea. So a lot of you might have already drank kombucha, and you might have seen that there's these things that form. You might have wondered what that is. That is bacterial cellulose. Cellulose is one of the most common molecules found in the world. All plants have cellulose, but the wonderful thing about this material is that it's pure. It doesn't have other structures you have to like separate from, but you just have cellulose in here. So what students did was a process to dry it and to create something that simulated the look and feel of the bubble wrap. And in that way, they could protect objects. But if somebody didn't want to give a second use to this plastic or to this material, they could dispose it, and under composting conditions, it would just return to nature as nutrients, right? If you think about a second use, that would be ideal, because if you think about a circular economy, the best thing is to reuse our materials. There was already some energy spent in creating this material, so the best thing would be to give it a second use. But if you don't have a second use, then it will just return to nature, causing no harm. Then the third example, now we have talked about the technology driven, so students that became passionate towards a biotechnology. And this is like my role as a professor, is kind of introducing you to a whole like world of biotechnologies, depending on your interest, to see what of those biotechnology interests you the most. Or you might be driven by a challenge, or you might be driven by a social problem. So here, students were really concerned about our rivers and how they became dyed by the dyes that they use in Medellin, which is a city that has a lot of like textile industries. So in nature, we find colors, like a lot of different types of colors. And here, the green fluorescent protein is produced by the jellyfish, by a jellyfish. So scientists today know like our genetic code, right? So we know that genetic codes can code or can produce proteins that have certain properties, either smells or colors or enzymes, you name it. So we can synthesize those proteins in a machine. We don't need any natural like organism, because DNA is sugars and carbons, like you can do it on a machine. And then we can insert it into a bacteria, and the bacteria can begin producing the color. So this bacteria that we see here was originally colorless. It was yellowish, kind of like beige color. And by introducing the gene, we can produce a green fluorescent protein that then we can dye on a Converse textile, for example, a fabric, and you can see its effect. We could also have other types of colors, and these colors can also bring smells if we wanted them to do. And then my final example is this one that Saad was particularly interested in. So these students didn't really know where to start their project, but they were fascinated with this ecosystem that is an endemic ecosystem in South America called El Páramo. And it's crucial for our water sources in our main cities, as is our capital, Bogota. So they walked in this ecosystem, and they said, we don't really know what we want to do, but we want to work with this moss. We love this moss. We think it's incredible. So they started looking in scientific literature, like, what about this moss? Why could this moss be interesting? They first came across papers that said, Well, moss is it's super absorbent. So it might have proteins that could serve as alternatives to what we use today in diapers that are highly contaminant. So what if instead of using this super absorbent material, we use proteins instead? But then while they were doing the research, they came across a paper. It was a thesis done in Peru, where they found that this moss was able to eliminate microplastics in drinking water. And they were like, how is that possible? Then they searched a little more about this problem, about the microplastics in drinking water, and they found that it takes up to 1 week to eat the equivalent of a credit card. We don't really know about this. There's not a lot of people doing research about the effects of plastics in our health. But what we know as a fact is that they have already found microplastics in lungs, in our blood, in the Everest, like everywhere, right? This is like a real problem. We still do not know the consequences. So they fell in love with this problem about the microplastics. And then they decided to create a filter that could be adapted to homes in the coastal areas of Colombia, because here people are already used to boiling water. It's water that it's not safe to drink, sorry. But boiling the water does not eliminate the microplastics. So they have to pass it through this moss filter. Then the moss traps it, and then they can heat it or boil it and eliminate the other things that they find in it. And finally, I want to end with a book that we have written that has like more details about the methodology and how we followed biodesign, which is combining design thinking with biotechnologies or strategies that come from nature to solve any problems. We recommend addressing problems in the frame of the Sustainable Development Goals, where you can find like every single problem, kind of. So it's a good starting point, and also the book has strategies of how you can test science, how you can grow fungi, how you can grow bacterial cellulose, or do bioplastics, and so on. So thank you very much.
Great, Giovanna, thank you so much. I really love your insights. So now over to Lit. I think you're there. I can see you. Lit, so for the ones that joined a bit late, Lit is a hybrid educator, sorry. She's based in Shenzhen in China, and she did MDDI the past cycle. So over to you, Lit. I'm gonna make you co-host, so now you should be able to share your screen.
Okay, thank you, Josefina, and nice to meet everyone. So, in my case, I must talk about the Petal to Detail model. So I believe MDDI is a program for everyone here to consider your position in such a model transition. And in my case, it works in the educational system. So what I try to do is I consider the current education system, like education as a form of service. It's running in a pedal way. So I witness a lot of students when they graduate from school, they just toss away their books and toss away those knowledge, and they consider those courses unuseful. So I want to give students more freedom to choose and decide what they want to learn and to learn more about their own context. So that's my case, the philosophy, like in education, what I think it can be done in a digital way. And so for my MDDI project, I've done a system design in a school, in a high school. And in that school, I choose an AP curriculum as my target, and how can I change the model from teacher take all the content from some centralized institution like the college board. Sorry? How can I change that to something like student can come up with their own idea and tell the teacher what I want to learn? So the teacher as a committee can partner up with parents and with members in the community to support students' idea. So it's a yearly plan and consisting of activity like open mic, so students can talk about their own idea, and field work. They can go outside and check out how things happen in the community, and design challenge what happened during the summertime, so that they can do some field work and come up with a solution in a fixed timeline. And then after that, they can have a year to incubate their own project into an academic paper, something like that. And in my prototype, so far I've done one cycle of this prototype, and I have some project outcome from my students. So one of it is actually linked to the biodesign. So a team of my students used some SCOBY to design some food packaging, and what they want to do next is a machine that they can put that machine in some restaurant and persuade them to try to use that machine to cultivate their own food packaging material. And this year, I am expanding the design challenge concept into a Fab City challenge format. So this is the project I'm doing now. It's called Fab City Challenge Shenzhen, and it's happening at the end of July and the beginning of August. So it's more like a summer school, but also a design challenge. And we have 6 topics over the whole Shenzhen city, and students can pick topic they like the most and most relevant to their future academic interest, so that they can try to use those knowledge they learn in their courses and try to see how they can conduct those skills and knowledge in real life. So that's what I'm working on now. So I'm giving the mic back to Josefina.
Great, thank you, Lid. Great, amazing. Over to you, Sad. Let me check.
Got
You
it.
should be
Thank
able-
you, Josefina.
Thank you.
So yeah, my name is Saad. Currently in the class, so very much in the right smack in the middle of my MDDI program. So it's fascinating to hear from Lit, and I'm seeing a lot of echoes of challenges that I'm facing right now. So I wanted to just very quickly set the context. I'm based in Singapore, which is often described as a tiny red dot, which is really, really small. So the dot actually covers the entire country. So for context, that is the size of the country in comparison to Barcelona. It's the pink outline is all of Singapore. We are a island nation, city, state, if you like. So I'm based here. My background is in tech. And I don't know, I'm not exactly an expert when it comes to like design or bio or things like that, but I've been learning a lot from this course. And I'd like to share some of my experiences. If you're new to Singapore, this is a good primer. I'm sure a lot of people recognize Crazy Rich Asians a lot. I mean, I had to start with a map because, you know, everybody loves maps and MDDI. Singapore is tiny, but it's very shiny. So please come visit. And if you've watched Crazy Rich Asians, it is all about the food. And that is central to the culture around this island nation. And it's also very central to my focus. Singapore is, because it's an island, it's surrounded by ocean on all four sides. Seafood is very much in our DNA. And Singapore consumes more seafood than most people around the world, which was a bit of a surprise for me. And again, I must credit the MDDI facilitators. The faculty has encouraged me to look at these numbers. Me being a tech person, I don't normally look into these things, but it has been fascinating to see a different perspective on how we interact with the life that is in the oceans that we depend on. So my focus is on microplastics, which is something that Giovanna also mentioned. I am definitely very much passionate about this issue. And my approach is what I want to share is co-creation and open science. So my background, because I'm in tech and I believe in open source, translating that into open hardware through science is, I think, a very effective way of engaging with people in a meaningful way. So the context here is plastics in the ocean. I mean, we're kind of all have different perspectives on what this is and what this means. But generally, what we're talking about is waste. Often single-use plastics that accumulates in the environment and breaks down into tiny little pieces, which then get consumed by animals unintentionally most of the time. And then sometimes we consume those creatures as food. So they enter back into our systems. So when we think that we've gotten rid of it, we really haven't. It might actually wind up back on our dinner plates, which is something that I think Singaporeans and also people in general would care deeply about. Giovanna also mentioned this is an idea that sort of found its way into the depth of my brain, and I couldn't get rid of it. It was an infectious idea, and I couldn't quite wrap my head around it. Is it really true that a credit card size worth of plastic is something that we as human beings unintentionally, without knowing it, every week we seem to consume it without really understanding or without feeling it? So to me, that was a little bit surprising and led down a rabbit hole, which I've been exploring. And the context around this is that it's not just a Singapore problem. There is only one ocean in the world, really. I mean, we've got different names for it, but it really is, the planet is mostly ocean. So we're all connected. The idea that I've been exploring is through the context of food and technology. And like I mentioned, it was a bit of a rabbit hole. So the program has been incredibly helpful in helping provide a context and very interesting prompts and challenges to try and sort these things out and connect them. And like Thomas mentioned, this is a hybrid program, and it's, I think, hybrid not just in that it is both online and offline. It allows me to bring my day job and what I do as a hobby into the course, and things that I have done in the past, things that I'm actually passionate about now, and things that I would like to be working on. I've been able to sort of integrate that in the course. And it's not just, it's been strongly encouraged, and I deeply appreciate that. So the frameworks and the challenges and the prompts, and also learning from the other students that are part of my course has been, I think, the most valuable takeaway from all of this. So using a lot of maps, but also maps that are with a social nature, looking at how people interact with Singapore through food and food sharing and the culture that surrounds it was, again, very eye-opening. So I was able to rediscover maps in a new way. And of course, the Fab City full stack has been super helpful in trying to link these initiatives and these ideas and what I want to do with it, with the global context, but also everything in between. I mean, I would like to be able to understand this problem better and see if there are ways that I might be able to address it. But at the same time, I'm not alone in this. There are so many other people who are linked to this. So the full stack was a brilliant tool that I've been able to use. It's not just to plan it out, but also as a way to communicate with different stakeholders, organizations along the way. But to sort of bring it all to a point, what I've been able to do is to craft a little campaign, which is to look at these prompt questions on the right-hand side of the screen, where you have the credit card as a prompt, but also there are other issues similarly, which were very surprising. And I wasn't really sure if this was true or not. And it's all based on science and based on research, but my initial reaction was, is this really true? And is this, are we sure about this? I mean, do we really consume our credit cards worth of plastic every week? And that's kind of how the campaign was born. And Singapore has a saying, every time somebody doesn't believe anything, they just go like, you sure not? So the campaign's called Sure Not. And it was an idea, and initially it was just like, in conversation. But while talking to people, a lot of people responded exactly the same way. And so we turned it into a bit of a prototype. But the underlying idea is to try and challenge this industrial concept, or this industrial narrative of recycling, because we were all told that plastic goes back into, when we recycle plastic, it goes back into other products. And this is a narrative that not everybody believes. And I'm highly skeptical about this. And the environmental impact of this is much higher than we are led to believe. And in Singapore, it's less than 5.7% of consumer plastic actually gets recycled. And this is similar to other countries. So the narrative that we all seem to be carrying around in our heads seems to be the one that is coming from industry. So I set out to try and challenge that in some way. So looking at different approaches by artist interventions, where people were invited to encounter plastics and microplastics in very different ways, and learning from that, the artist and the designer approach, because I'm a tech person, I have to learn from other people. It was to try and confront people with hands-on activity and interactive installation. And so the hands-on approach is something that I think is the only meaningful way forward. And being a maker and a tech person, I figured, I'm not going to be able to do the artistic approach. And so I've chosen to borrow from open source design. And a lot of people are motivated by YouTube videos and TikTok videos that they see these days, where you can convert plastic bottles into something useful. But the question remains as to how. And very rarely do people actually get their hands dirty with trying to build the how, rather they just watch the videos and they share them, and they're quite happy to talk about it. But what my intervention is trying to do is to borrow from the open source movement, and instead of creating something new, we don't really need more novel entities, like Thomas likes to say. So why don't we just replicate something that has already been tried and tested? And so that's kind of what I've been doing. The learning by doing approach has been something that's very close to my heart, and it allows me to interact with people and get them to respond in more meaningful ways. And so we've been looking at not just building the machine, which is great, all the instructions are there, but also what do people take away from this experience? It's not just about building the machine. The machine is just a thing. How does that make you feel? What do you learn about it? There are different ways of interacting with the making process. And when you invite people in, there are surprising and creative ways that people bring themselves to the problem. And a good example and source of inspiration for me is always content creators and YouTubers that like to share their inventions. I'm sure some of these are familiar to you. But the joy in prototyping, the joy in actually doing and learning is I think a more meaningful approach. Running short of time, I'll very quickly wrap up. So the campaign is around how do we feel about microplastics, and the objects themselves are just a tool to enable that kind of hands-on interaction. So we've been doing taking my plastics and converting them into 3D printed objects, but at the same time, I've been looking at bioplastics and how we might make our own materials instead of relying on the industry process and the narrative that usually comes with it. And that's led to a very interesting exploration around Singapore, where the bioplastic experiments and the prototypes, the provocation prototypes that Giovanna introduced, they've led to a collaboration with a marine research lab that's also based in Singapore, that is now considering using some of these things that are biopolymers instead of concrete or other kinds of plastic, and using that to rescue corals. There are corals around, and there's a large coral remediation project. And now I'm working with the lab to introduce this idea of using food waste and creating platforms for corals to grow. And this was done with the participation of the community, and we were able to then contribute back to Materium, which is something that was mentioned, and it's available as part of the commons. So to wrap up, Singapore, as small and as an island as it is surrounded by even smaller islands. So all of these labels are for the tiny little islands that surround Singapore, and Pulau basically means island. The one at the bottom, you'll see says Pulau Semakau, and that is of interest because it was featured quite heavily by a YouTuber that's quite popular, who did a feature about the landfill. So it's a man-made island that is Singapore's only landfill. And it's very strange because it's different from most other landfills. It's in the middle of the ocean. It doesn't look like a trash heap. It is basically filled with ash. And so the YouTuber seems to have drawn quite a lot of attention to it, captured people's imaginations. But as great as it sounds on YouTube within 60 seconds, there's a deeper story to it. We're running out of space. The landfill was designed to last until 2045, but because of the consumer habits that we have, it's going to run out of 2030. It's going to fill up by 2035. That's 10 years ahead of design. And so this is an issue that Singaporeans are now feeling quite strongly about. And when this is pointed out, what I found is that people are motivated to have a personal narrative around how we deal with waste. And so that brings me back to the campaign which we're running, which is called Sure or Not, where we question this narrative that is often repeated by industry. We try and maybe challenge that in some way. So I'm sorry I've gotten completely over time. Thank you for letting me share. And I'm just going to leave my Notion page up. And some of the books that were recommended by the faculty that have completely changed my life are also on the screen. So thank you again.
Thank you, Sad. Amazing presentation. So as you all have seen, we've shown two different student profiles, basically. So Lid was more focused in education, Sad was more focused in technology and in biotechnology as well. And the different profiles, I'm going to share my screen. I'm going to go over two last slides, and then we can jump over to the Q&A. So for you to know, as this is an interdisciplinary program, the profiles of the students are really broad. And you can check some other alumni projects in our Notion page. So you can scan the QR and go over those projects. Sad's project is not up yet because he's still doing the course, but we're gonna have it at the end of July for sure. Also, you can get in contact with him and Lid and other students. I've seen that in the participant list, we have, for example, Leila that you were talking about. This focus on technology, and you were thinking on getting in contact with students. So please feel free to contact students, and we encourage you also to check the Notion page. As well, basic information about the program. This is something that you can find in the webpage, so it's nothing new. All the links that I pasted in the chat has this information as well. So I'm gonna run really quickly over it. So the program is a 10-month program. It starts in October this year and ends in July next year. It is a hybrid program. This means that the classes are online, but the prototyping is in person in your local Fab Labs or makerspaces. Right now, we're starting version number 3 of this program. Directors Tomás Díaz and Tomás Vivanco. And this program is organized by Fab City Foundation and also by IAC, the Institute for Advanced Architecture of Catalonia. It is also delivered by the Fab Lab network, but by the Fab City network, and also by Fab Lab Barcelona. And for you to take into consideration, really important, this program is accredited by Universidad Lleida in Spain, and it provides 60 ECTS credits. So in case you have any questions, you can scan the QR to apply. And if you have any specific questions, you can contact me or Dan, who's my teammate as well, coordinating this program. And you can also book a meeting with me. What's the process? Some of you I've seen in the chat, you're already applicants, but for the ones that are interested and would like to apply, basically you go over the IX portal application, and then you go over an admissions process. The team reviews all the documentation that was requested, and you go over an interview with one of the directors. After that interview, the team again reviews your profile, and you will get an answer if you got accepted or not to this program. So I encourage all of you to open your mics and take into consideration that we have here Tomás, Giovanna, Sad, and Lid. And please feel free to ask them any questions or to ask me any operational questions that you might have. Okay, I see in the chat also, I'm just checking there. Kenche, you had some questions for Sad, right? But Sad, you're super quick, so you already shared that. Leila, also please feel free to ask any questions to Sad or to Tomás, Giovanna, Eliana. I know that you're in the process of being part of this master, so I don't know if you also have any questions, but please feel free to do so.
Maybe a question for Sad that is now still in the course. I just want to know, like how are the classes? Like, are they like mainly frontal classes? There is like some sessions that are already hands-on, although they are online. And how do you find engagement also with the other students, for example?
Thank you, Leila. It's an excellent question. I had similar concerns with getting into the program, whether or not, I'd be able to manage this, together with work and so on. Because I do have a day job that I have to try and balance. But it's like what Tomás said, the course is designed to be hybrid, and all of the faculty take into consideration that we are all of the participants have different time zones. I mean, nobody in my class is in the same time zone. They're all spread very much around the planet. So that's a factor that's taken into consideration. And the hybrid element where hands-on activities required. We're informed beforehand, and it's indicated whether or not it's mandatory or optional. And in most cases, it is they've provided like alternatives that you might be able to source. So it's incredibly flexible. And I think it's been really nice that all the faculty have been so accommodating of not just the time zone, but also access to materials and also equipment. So the hands-on activities are designed to be very adaptable. And I was actually able to do one of the hands-on activities while I was on a business trip in a hotel. So kind of like repurposed the equipment that was in the hotel room just to do a science experiment. It was a bit of a challenge, but it was so much fun, and it was very encouraging. Learned quite a lot from that.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions that you might have? I think also that's a great question, and following up on what Sad was saying, it's mandatory for students to attend live classes in a 75%, let's say, yeah, percentage. So we encourage students to connect live because the experience is completely different, but you also have the alternative to watch the recordings. So yeah, that's an alternative. But for the workshops, we have a workshop format. We mostly encourage students to be live because the interaction is much better. Shanna, go ahead, please open your mic. Did I see there?
My mic is
Yes.
Yeah, I wanted to
Yeah.
talk about that. I thought I saw that there were scholarships or grants for women in tech and other categories. Can you talk about that?
Yes, of course. Right now, scholarships for this new cycle started last year in December. So we had the first IS scholarships that have already closed. Then we opened the Fab City Awards scholarships that already closed as well. But we have an ongoing scholarship that you can check in IAC's website that's called Women in Tech. So in your case, you could apply to that one for sure. And also, recently it was opened the industry scholarships as well for online masters of IAC. So you have two scholarships right now going on, the Women in Tech and the industry scholarship as well. I can share with you, I'm going to share with you in the chat both links to the scholarships because sometimes it's not easy to find them. But yes, you have the opportunity to apply to both of them. Thank you. Checking in the chat. Thank you. Bueno, Joe has already left, so I don't know if anyone else has any questions. We are a bit running out of time, but please feel free to ask any questions. So here you have the link to the Women in Tech scholarship, and now I'm going to paste the link for the industry scholarship. That's the other one that you could apply. 1 second. Okay, there you have them. Any other questions? If not, Tom, do you want to do a final wrap up? Any comments?
Yes, thank you very much, Jose, for setting up this webinar. Thank you all for joining. Special thanks to Saad, Lead, and Joanna that she just left. As you can see, I think that all the faculty and all the students, we want to build, so in between all the faculty and students, we want to build, let's say, on a group of people that is looking and group of people that we are not only looking, but also doing things in a different way. So we as a faculty, we try to be exactly at the same level as students, in the sense that of course that we need some, that we have the responsibility to lead the classes and the program, but is to, let's say, to put ourselves in the same level so we can build, let's say, a platform, a group, a network of trust, but also of a platform in which we can learn from each other. We can learn from the diversity of our students, the diversity of our faculty, as Chinoy, as Sad was saying, sorry, almost no one is in the same time. So the program is designed for all can be in classes at the same time, so we can be together. We have students that are traveling from one place to other to meet other students, to prototype locally. So that in this, let's say, trust group, we want to become, let's say, a group of change makers, change makers who are designing things differently. And of course, for that, it's super important the role that you play inside the class, right? We want to learn also from you. You will learn from others, and yeah, and we hope that you can connect with us. If you have any further questions, you can ask Jose or write me, and we will be delighted to help you on the upcoming steps for applying. So thank you all.
Great. Thank you, Tom. Thank you all once again. If you have any other questions, as Thomas was saying, feel free to contact us. Thank you, Sad and Dit, for being here and showing your projects. And a last comment from my side is that I believe that these projects have a long life application, so we will see how they evolve. And that's the most interesting part from our end, how these amazing ideas turn into actions. So thank you everyone for being here and for supporting this kind of programs that we believe the world need with really like urgency. So hope to see you all and soon, and feel free to contact me for any other thing.
Great. Bye bye. Thank you.
Thank
See you all.
you.